Hi everyone, my name is Kathryn Koromilas and I'm really excited to be here presenting this workshop as part of the Hooked Festival. I'm tuning in from a little cottage in the southwest of Scotland, and I'm here to share with you and to invite you to do some meditative writing with me today. I've called this session Writing as Meditation, Not Destination, and I guess it's all about using the tools of writing and the practice of writing to stay in the present moment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my own meditative writing practice, where I'm coming from, and we'll do a couple of writing activities, and hopefully I'll send you off with an interesting and useful and calming tool for you to use at other times. Do let me know in the chat box where you're tuning in from. I know that some of you are in a classroom, so that might be your teacher who'll pop into the chat box and let me know where you are. If you're zooming in or tuning in rather from your own home, let me know where you're coming from. So it's an absolute pleasure to me. I'll keep an eye on the chat box while I introduce you to the session today. So, meditative writing. Why don't we just start with just getting comfortable in the space, and then I'll start talking a bit more. So I don't know where you are. You might be in a busy classroom. You might be like me, sitting in a room in your home where it's warm and comfy and you're alone. But wherever you are, just get yourself seated. You might need to jump around on your seat a bit. Feel yourself into your seat. Get really comfy. We're going to just start by just trying to calm down and breathe into the space. Make sure your seat is firm on the ground and you're sort of sitting in a place where you feel grounded and safe and secure on that seat. You might want to wriggle your fingers. I find that before I start writing, I want to make sure that my fingers are stretched. Now, before we go to the gym, we do lots of stretching of our bodies, etc. And I do that before I start writing. My fingers just cracked just then. I don't know if yours did. You might want to even just press your palms against one another and make some, like as if you're going to start a fire with some wood, and just warm your palms up and just see what's happening there. A lot of energy there, and probably lots of microphone noise, but it's worth it. And then you can just feel that your hands are warming up. And as you do that, just sort of, move around. Writing doesn't often seem to be connected to the body. Sometimes we feel that writing is happening just between our heads and our fingertips. But what I want you to think about today is how your entire body and mind and breath and thoughts are focused on this activity. So let's have a look at our breath. Let's focus on our breath. We're going to take a deep breath. I know that some of you are in a classroom with others and it could be a bit awkward, but we're all in it together. So let's just do it. Let's go for it. So take a deep breath in. Ooh. And I find that whenever I take that first deep breath, I always feel like giggling or like definitely smiling, because I feel that we run around and we forget to breathe. And so when we actually allow ourselves to breathe, it's really quite a shock at first and then quite nice. So take that deep breath in. And if you know anything about the Eastern meditative traditions, the breath is used as a point of anchor. So breath is a really interesting anchor. And by anchor, I literally mean an anchor to ground you in the present moment. And breath is a really good thing to do that. So breath is something that we have to do all the time. It's always there. So it's a dependable anchor. So whenever you find, says the meditative tradition, your mind going off, because your mind's often a busy place doing lots and lots of things, distracting us, building obstacles for us, obstructing us from what we want to do. If you find that your thoughts and your mind are kind of taking you off somewhere, focusing on your breath as the anchor is often a really good place to start. And so just spend a couple more seconds just focusing on that breath, and think about when you take the next breath in, where is it? Where can you feel it? Sometimes I start by feeling it at the back of my neck, in my throat. Is it here? Where is it? Where do you feel that first contact with that breath? Is it the tip of your nose? Is it around your lips? I find that when I take those first breaths, it's often kind of around here. I feel the breath at the top, at my throat, at my nose. And then as I take more deep breaths in and take time with breathing out, the breath kind of settles, goes lower, my chest, and then down to my tummy, my gut, and then I feel much more grounded. So take those few moments in, and we are going to keep breathing throughout this session, even when we start writing. And the thing about mindfulness practice in writing is that instead of using the breath as the sole anchor, we're going to use writing, the actual physical act of writing, as the anchor. So the practice of meditative writing, and of course, it's not a strict rule. Everyone kind of does it differently, and you'll find your own way to do it. But it typically involves writing with pen and paper, or you might prefer a digital device. You can do it any way you like. But hopefully, you've all come to this session with a pen and paper. And I'm just going to show you what I've brought with me. I've actually brought a journal. I've got a dedicated journal to writing of this sort. And it's just a really nice journal. It's a Clairefontaine journal. The paper's really beautiful and smooth. And I'm mentioning this because any meditative process links itself really nicely to a ritual. So I'm going to encourage you to take away from this session the concept of writing as a ritual. So, have a think. You might want to go off and purchase a nice special journal. You might be inspired after this to do so. I've come prepared also with my favorite pen, and it's a Lamy pen, and it's a fountain pen, and I really like it because it does a nice scratching noise on the paper, and I like that I get to have like some ink, so I fill the pen with ink. So as you can see, I'm creating like this ritual around my writing practice. And it's the same with any meditative practice, like even yoga. You've often been called to maybe to sit on the yoga mat or to sit on a cushion. Mindful practices often take place in a ritual space or a sacred space. And what I'm going to suggest to you today is to think about taking your writing into that space. But having said that, we can't always control whether our ritual or sacred or secret places are going to be like that. Because, for example, in your home, you might have some guests staying over, and then your space will be taken up by guests. So the idea of establishing a mindfulness practice is that you can ultimately switch in and switch off and take it anywhere you like. I often go and always have my journal in my handbag, for example, so I'm ready to go and do this anywhere. Okay, that's it by a bit of preamble. So the intention of meditative writing is to help you remove mental obstacles. I would love to know more about how you all use writing. Are you writing creative pieces? Are you writing poems? What's your creative practice like? If you can access the chat box, I'd love to hear more about you and what you do with writing. If not, I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to do so. But for now, this practice, I guess, will be something that you might be able to use as a way into your writing practice and also as a way out of your writing practice. But you can even just use it as a personal little private meditative escape. And if you do end up setting a ritual space up in your home or somewhere else, it could literally be a little corner in a room with one cushion, one candle, and your notebook always there and your favorite pen, for example. Or you might want to add, something that adds a ritualistic quality to it, some flowers or a little, statue, etc., or something like that. All right, so the process and what I'm really going to hopefully achieve here in this session is the idea of focusing on writing as removing mental obstacles, the idea of encouraging mindful concentration, and the ultimate goal maybe is to enhance your creative practice, but maybe not even that. We don't need a goal, we just need to sit down and just enjoy writing. One thing that I'm also going to introduce, and you might already do this, is to introduce a timed practice. So with writing, I always limit the time that I do this sort of free form meditative writing, and the time frame is usually between 10 and 20 minutes. So I give myself a time frame to know that whatever happens during this freestyle process or practice, it's only going to last between 10 and 20 minutes. And I do that because sometimes stuff happens that we don't really want to stay with. And you know that you can actually just, at the end of 20 minutes, the alarm goes off, you close your journal and you go out and you go for a walk, or you go for a stretch, or you do some yoga, or you go for a run, or you make yourself a cup of tea and you have maybe some milk and a biscuit. So have a think of the before the practice and the after the practice and a timed practice. Now, of course, if you get in a flow and the practice is gorgeous and joyful and you're creating something really lovely, allow yourself the extra time. But if it's not happening for you, then give yourself permission to step out of it. All right, that's sort of it in terms of preamble. I'm going to give you an idea of how this session is going to work. And I think we need to get to some writing. Some of you have popped into the chat box, and thank you for that. You've tuned in with a mug of tea from the island of Isla, and you're feeling relaxed. That's lovely. Thank you so much for giving me some comments there in the chat box. Okay, so I'm going to do, hopefully time permitting, of course, I'm going to read a poem to you first. And the first poem is by a poet who is very much into creative practice as mindful practice. And it's a poem that I hope will allow us just to focus on our own thoughts and the quietness of our own mind. I think that when we read poetry, or when we do anything, when we read anything on social media, we're not really listening. We're kind of, even before we start reading, we're already preparing to have an opinion, write a response, share it with our friends on Instagram or Facebook. So there's this sense that we're always in a state of anticipating responding to something. So this session is going to suggest to you to just take your time, just wait, don't respond, just sit with it, so we can try and go deep into our own voice. I think we're too reactive, and we kind of forget whether we even have our own voice, and that's kind of really key to our creative practice. All right, so I'm going to start by reading one of my favorite poems in the world, and then I'm going to give you a short timed writing task, and then I'm going to bring you back, and then I'm going to read you another poem and give you another writing task to do, which is a bit quirky. You might not have done that one first. Okay, so I'm going to read one of my favorite poems to you. And all I want you to do is close your eyes. Now, if you're in a classroom and it's a bit weird, don't worry. Keep your eyes open. If you want to close your eyes, that's fine. On your table or wherever you are in front of you, have your notebook or your bits of paper open to a double-page spread, like just a blank double-page spread. And just, you might want to hold your pen and just hold it, or you might want to place it before you. And let's take a couple of deep breaths before I start reading. And and there's Renita, hi from Wigtown, and Biag, hi from Troon. And how about we just take a couple more breaths, because I've been talking a bit too much today, and then I'm going to read you something. And take a deep breath in and smile. And take a deep breath, take out, And if you like, you may close your eyes. And here I am reading from David Whyte. That's Whyte. And the poem is called Start Close In. And it's from his River Flow, his new and selected poems by Many Rivers Press, 2007. So here we go. Just relax and take this in. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way to begin the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To hear another's voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes an intimate, private ear that can really listen to another. Start right now. Take a small step you can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. Okay, so the invitation now is to start by grabbing your pen and just whatever comes to mind, put it down on paper and go slowly. Form the words slowly. Don't think about them. Just start putting words on the page. And whatever comes, so just start close in with whatever comes. And if you find that your mind is trying to write something good or telling you what you should be doing, just let it speak and let it go, and then come back to the page. And I'm going to give you 10 minutes to breathe and write. Just start close in. Let your thoughts come in, let them go. Keep coming back to the page. And as you write, you may breathe in. Don't forget to breathe in, but keep focusing on the writing, on the words on the page, on the sound that your pen's making on the page. And just go for it. Just write. I'll see you in 10 minutes. that is 10 minutes, everyone. Now 10 minutes is up. I wonder how that was for you. I wonder if you could hear the sound of the pen on the page, or if you were on a keyboard, the tapping on the keyboard, which is rather nice as well. If you can access the chat box, if you're on your own computer or device, let me know in one word, what's your mood now? How was that? How are you feeling? The timed activity is really important with mindfulness. The idea of limiting the practice is important, because the idea is that you're able to pop in to the practice and then pop out of the practice. Of course, being writing, and if we're all creative in the space right now, we do always have, oh, thanks, Renita, and Brooks, feeling calm. Yeah, I think calm's good. As creatives, we tend to feel that we want to produce something on the page. But let me draw your attention again today to the tagline of this session. It's writing as meditation and not destination. So the focus is on just being in the present moment. We don't have to always produce something, but just be in the present moment and enjoy the process. I've worked with a lot of people who use journaling as a way into the creative process, and one of the big concerns or worries is that this freestyle journaling doesn't always produce something magnificent at the end. So I think the focus then here, and my suggestion to you and my invitation to you, is to give yourself permission to just enjoy writing for the sake of writing, for the sake of just escaping, finding some philosophical moments, finding stillness and peace and calm. Now, the idea after a meditative writing session is to literally close the journal and then go off and do something else. So as I said earlier, go off and, I don't know, do a stretch, go for a run, go back to work if it must be, do the cooking, clean the kitchen, have a cup of a warm beverage, etc. So to move off back into the world. But today I'm going to just give you a suggestion. So something to take away after this. And what you can do this as a weekly thing, or like a weekly review of your meditative journal, is to go back and give yourself maybe half an hour to go back over what you've done, and just look for anything that strikes you as interesting or curious. So what are you curious about? What's come up? Maybe it's a word that you haven't used in a while, or a feeling that's come through, or a color. And you can go back over and pull out key phrases or words, and then use that as a prompt to do some actual kind of focused creative work, which has a different focus. Its focus is to actually produce a work to ship, or to publish, or to share, or to blog about, or to put on Facebook. But keep the meditative practice to yourself. Okay, so that was basically one way into a kind of meditative practice. I'm now going to introduce you to a different activity, and it's something that I like to do in the morning. And what I do is, again, I sit with my journal, and I have a clean double-page spread. And what's going to happen is there's going to be one activity that happens on the left-hand side and then another activity that happens on the right-hand side, which might go onto another page. But we're probably not going to use more than 3 pages, because, again, we're doing a timed activity. And so this activity is a copy work activity. So there's a poem that's going to be the text that we sit with and meditate with. And what we're going to do And I'd love to know in the chat box, in the comments, if you've tried this before. You can always contact me later and let me know if you've tried this before, or even tell me how this went for you and whether you'll try this again. So I'm going to read you a poem, and I'm actually going to share my screen and show you the poem, because when I finish reading the poem, what I want you to do is to literally copy it word for word. So word for word on the left-hand side of your double page spread if you've got a journal in front of you, or on a bit of paper. And so the idea of copying a poem is literally just letting go of yourself and all the expectations that you have of yourself to produce work, to produce new ideas, to be original, to be creative, to be a genius on the page. Again, it's the idea of not responding. As David White said in that first poem that I read to you, Start Close In, he's basically saying, just leave the other voices aside and just stay with this thing. So in this activity, I'm going to read you a poem, and all I want you to do is just to sit with the poem. And you don't have to do anything. Just sit with the poem and focus on the poem and listen. So it's an act of listening and leaving your voice and your opinions and your response, leave them to the side for the time being. So here's how it's going to go. I'm going to share my screen in a moment, and I think my assistants, yes, it's done, lovely. So you should be able to see a poem called Enough. And this is a poem by David White, again, a poet who writes for mindfulness to a certain extent. He's a very spiritual poet, and this poem is called Enough. I'm going to read it to you, and I'll explain what we're going to do after it again. So here it is. Enough. Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life we have refused again and again until now. Until now. Enough. Enough. These words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This sitting here, this opening to the life, this opening to the life we have refused again, this opening to the life we have refused again and again until now, until now. Okay, so that's the poem. You have it on your screen. Your task, if you would like to accept this information, is to, again, on the left-hand side of your journal or your whatever paper you have, to just copy the poem word for word. Note the punctuation points. Note the line breaks. Go slow. Form beautiful letters. If your thoughts are coming in and making you rush, let them tell you to rush, but just come back to the page and come back to the poem and slow down and follow it. Be aware of your breathing. You might want to sync your breathing to the formation of the letters and the words. And so when you get to the end and you've copied the poem, read over it in your mind out loud if you like. And when you're ready, head on over to the right-hand side page. And there, start by imitating, if you like. So you could maybe just even start the same way. But then at one point, give yourself permission to just go for it, to start recording your own thoughts, your own feelings and senses and smells and tastes and whatever comes in response to the poem. And then you might want to go on to the next page and reform or redraft what you've written. And I will bring you back in 15 minutes. So the process is copying, breathing, reading, waiting, going to the right page, imitating, taking a few steps, jumping ahead, writing your own thoughts, your own poem maybe, or a short story. You might want to do some redrafting, and by that stage, you'll hear me bringing you back. So enjoy, and I'll see you in about 15 minutes. And that is about 15 minutes, everyone. Wow, we did it. I wonder how that was for you. If you are able to comment, please do. Kira, it's absolutely, you really made me smile with your comments there. The idea of unlocking creativity through something like this makes me very, very happy. Do let me know if you are near the chat box, how that went for you. If you're in a classroom with your classmates and your teacher, I guess you've got a busy day planned, but if you do find some time, if I happen to be in the room with you, I would definitely now ask you to take a deep breath and read over it, and even take a bold breath and share something that you've written. The way I like to share after these sessions are kind of two ways. You can either share by literally reading what you've written, or share by just talking about what you've written, or what your intentions were, or what you felt about it. So there can be direct sharing or just indirect sharing, and of course questions, etc. What do your pages look like? I'm always curious about my writing, but there's me kind of copying out the first the poem on that page, and then I've popped onto the next 2 pages. How many pages did you end up writing? That's always interesting as well. And again, if this was something that you were to do in the morning, I tend to do this kind of copy work in the morning, and I give myself between 10 and 20 minutes, and then the journal's closed, and then I pop off into the day. And then you can even follow on with a bit of free writing. So in this session, I introduced you to 2 types of meditative activities. The first one was just a completely free writing, free flow stream of consciousness in response to a prompt that you heard. It happened to be the David Whyte poem. The second type of approach is the copy work approach, so copying texts. And you can actually literally just create a whole journal based on copy work. So find a book that you like. I sometimes work with Mary Oliver's poems, and I'm going to do a session on Saturday with Mary Oliver's poems. They're really short poems. So at a practical level, you can, copy them on one page and then respond to them, and it doesn't take very long at all. So on Saturday, I'm also going to introduce some more guided activities. So there are many, many ways to get into and to establish a meditative writing practice. And there's a comment in the chat box about using someone else's words to stimulate writing rather than my own. And I think if there's one takeaway, the biggest one for me is the idea of actually engaging in a conversation with what's been written before us. I think we have the pressure of having to, create our own voice, create our own unique creative practice and creative product. But there really isn't anything completely unique in the world. Everyone has touched on all the issues before. What is unique is allowing yourself the space to quietly find your perspective. And many times it is, you'll find your own voice in conversation with another voice. And by conversation, I mean what we did today. We read 2 poems and we sat with them quietly and we conversed with them. We responded to them. And through that process came our own little things. So if you were to share with others, you'll see that everyone produced something completely unique from the same prompt, which is quite an interesting result. So I really hope that this session was calming, but also curiously inviting to create. I hope you enjoyed the hour that we've spent together, and I look forward to seeing some of you maybe on Saturday and in the future. I think that I want to thank Wigtown Book Festival and the Hooked Festival for allowing me the opportunity to engage with you in this much loved practice of mine. Thank you all, and enjoy.